Hi everyone, we are here today with Aldo Romani and Letizia Monico. Would you briefly introduce yourself and your role?
I'm Aldo Romani, and I'm associate professor to the Department of Chemistry, Biology, and Biotechnology of the University of Perugia. And I'm also the president of the Excellence Center SMART, which is the scientific methodology applied to archaeology and art.
I'm Letizia Monico and I'm a researcher at the Istituto di Scienze e Tecnologie Chimiche Giulio Natta, and specifically in the research group dedicated to heritage science.
Okay, how do you decide to become a researcher and why specifically heritage science?
Well, mainly the decision to be involved in the research field comes from my curiosity. So to try to satisfy this curiosity, the research field is for sure one of the most stimulating fields. Concerning the heritage science, I started my activity as a photochemist, studying the process in which the light is involved in interaction with materials. And at a certain point, I translate this interest and this experience to the cultural heritage field, because the beauty is always better of any other thing.
What about you, Letizia?
So my desire to become a researcher started when I've understood that doing research give me the possibility to understand the beauty of the reality and to find some solution for replying to several questions that were not only my question, but a question of other people, and to keep up my curiosity. So why in heritage science? Because I love art, essentially. Okay. So I started to be involved in research in this specific field since my bachelor thesis, and all my career was done in this specific field.
Okay, I have another question for you, Letizia. How could the research of lead calcium phosphates be further developed?
Essentially, a lot of historical objects, sometimes lead calcium phosphates have been found also associated with chlorine compounds. So, from the chemistry point of view, it will be fundamental to understand how, for example, substituting the OH group of the hydroxyapatite compounds with chloride species can be identified and can be studied, essentially, to try to effectively identify such compounds in a historical object. Mm-hmm. And from the applicative point of view, the research will be developed once it will be found application in the art conservation and restoration field, or art historical field.
And going a little bit more deeper into application, which can be the application of the database that I created during my PhD thesis?
Oh, as for all the information that we daily collect in our activity in lab, these information are fundamental, for example, for the interpretation of the data that we obtain during a diagnostic campaign on artworks. With our mobile laboratory, we have met during the time a lot of different objects, and constantly we are involved in new problematic. Okay. One of these can be the presence of these calcium lead phosphate compounds, and if we will find this type of compound in a different type of artworks, probably we will be able to understand from where that compounds comes, what the reason because they are present, and also to identify them in an accurate way.
There are any other kind of application of this database?
For sure, it will be an improvement in relation to the interpretation of synchrotron radiation-based X-ray data, in particular XANES data and X-ray diffraction data. So the interpretation data mainly from studies of microfragments obtained from historical objects.
If you will talk to, let's say, new generation, which advice would you give them to someone that will start to study heritage science?
First of all, I can advise to follow your feeling, follow your curiosity, follow what you like. And concerning the heritage science field, be prepared to face with a complex system, with a complex field, because the heritage science is a couple of words that contains a lot of different type of materials, for example. So the knowledge that you need to have is for sure a very large knowledge. And the chemistry, physics, all the science, the art, the so-called hard sciences are for sure a very important starting platform in which you can build your deep knowledge concerning the nature, concerning the materials and the phenomena that are connected with materials, and you can for sure apply this knowledge to the field of cultural heritage.
And what about you, Letizia?
So first of all, I would advise to essentially to love the object that you are going to study, because each cultural, especially in the case of cultural heritage object, the meaning of each object goes behind materials. Yeah. So the intention of the artist was much more of a simple mixture of materials, let's say. And then another advice that is true for everyone that who is doing research is to have patience. And because most of the results that are coming from experiments are in the 90, 100% different what
you expect.
You expect exactly. And then to be determined to never give up, let's say. So, and keep up always each questions and curiosity. And a last aspect, always working team, let's say.
Yeah.
So that's it's fundamental for a scientist, because science cannot be done alone. So research in general.
Final question. Let me ask you, which is your best memory related to your job?
This is a very difficult question to find an answer, because as a lucky person as I am, because I have the opportunity to work with several beautiful objects, in team with a lot of beautiful persons. I have a lot of very beautiful pieces of my life connected with this activity. And in general, the best moments that we had were for sure together with the team, facing the problem together and trying to solve the problems together. And also a lot of travel be together. One of them in Venice, for example, moving our lab with boat inside the city was really a good piece of memory that I have.
And what about you, Letizia?
So my memories, as Aldo says, are related not only to specific experiments, but also to colleagues that were involved with me in these experiments or campaign of measurements. Because when you discover something, you do always you share. I mean, something of beautiful, no, of exciting with together. So this is, I guess, it's the one of the most beauty of science. And so essentially there are two moments. One, it was during the MOLAB that we did, the second MOLAB that we did at the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, when we started to do Raman measurement with Aldo. And I was really worried because you know that Raman spectrometer use laser. So I was very worried because, I mean, there were the sunflowers of Van Gogh that is a very iconic paintings. So I was worried. I mean, you know, when you are face to face with such kind of very famous paintings that are very important for everyone. Huh? I mean, for most of people. So, and Aldo said to me, Letizia, come on, let's start. You can do that. And so this was a very nice memory that I had because I understood, I mean, you cannot do anything alone, you know? So especially science, you need, so science is not collecting results and that's all, it's something of more. And the second one was that it's a common, that's happened in several moments. It's not a specific experiment, but is during synchrotron experiments, when several times happened that we stayed to analyze samples until late in the night, early morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, something like this. So I was always with someone, with my colleagues. We were sitting in front of the PC, because when you are a synchrotron, you have a lot of screen, a lot of computer, and that's all. And I look around, there were my colleagues there, we were there, and I had this question, but why we are doing this until this time?
At 5
What is
o'clock
that
in the
I doing
morning.
first? That I mean, what is? So that was the good memories that I have. That every time, I mean, are fundamental to go on with your work. And science is something of creative work, and is, and so that's.
So thank you for this little chat.
Thanks to you,
Thanks
Claudio.
to you.
We saw how heritage science is something complex that involves different people and expertise. Each point of view gives a better comprehension of the problem and consequently a better solution to it. We also understood how scientific research is an ongoing process. There is no final goal, but a constant improvement of our knowledge and lives. If you have any question about heritage science or this documentary, please contact me or any other expert. We will be happy trying to help you. And remember, watch a movie, read a book, listen music, spend times with your friends and stay always curious. Thank you for your precious time and see you soon.